And during the night, again, we captured a shadow figure that walked from the right to the left on the screen, and it cut through the laser grids. It cut all of the beams.
This episode is brought to you by Portfolio Box, an online portfolio made by creatives for creatives. What's up, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the podcast. As we continue Haunt Week, I am joined by Dr. Kris Sumner. She's a paranormal investigator who has traveled and investigated some of the most historic and reportedly haunted locations across the country. We're going to go inside a paranormal investigation. What are some of the tactics they use, equipment, and some of the most freaky stories she's encountered over the years. Stay locked in. You don't want to miss this one. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Hardwood Rod Podcast. We're going to continue this special themed week, and I got another special guest. She's a paranormal investigator. She's the founder or co-founder of the Soul Sisters Paranormal group. Dr. Kris Sumner, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Rod. I appreciate you having me tonight.
Thank you for coming by. You know, I know it's a busy time right now for you guys, I bet, and I'm lucky to get some of your time. But before we dive into these stories and kind of some of these researches that you've been doing, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, absolutely. So as you mentioned, my name is Kris Sumner, and I co-founded Soul Sisters Paranormal with my twin sister and my younger sister, and then two female family friends. So we are an all-female paranormal investigation group. We started in 2013, and it really just started for us as a girls' trip. We had an invitation to go to the West Virginia State Penitentiary, which is in Moundsville, West Virginia. It's one of the most haunted locations in the country. And so we were invited to stay the night in that prison. And we came away with such compelling evidence that night that we really wanted to form Soul Sisters Paranormal and go around the country visiting historic locations and highlighting any compelling paranormal evidence that we could find.
That's awesome. So all three of you are sisters, right? So who's the oldest?
Well, my twin and I, we share that.
Oh, that's right.
She's actually older by 8 minutes.
Okay.
And then we have a younger sister who's 7 years younger than us, and then two female family friends. So there's 5 of us in the team, but 3 of us are actually sisters.
Oh yeah, that was another one of my questions as far as your team, because I did kind of dig around your kind of YouTube page, and I did see there was little more than 3, but so there's like 5 of you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there's 5 on the team, and like I said, we are all female. And what also makes us a little bit unique in the paranormal community is that we all hold advanced degrees. So I've got a PhD, my twin has a PhD. We've got 2 lawyers on the team, as well as one of us that holds a master's degree in education. So that makes us a little bit unique in the fact that we actually go in with a research mindset to really try to. We have a healthy skepticism going into these locations. So in other words, we try to debunk things first before we call it paranormal or unexplainable evidence. We'll go in and look for things like light pollution or noise pollution or anything that could influence our investigation for the night. And then if we don't find any of that or we control for that, then we call it unexplainable.
Wow, there's a lot there, and I'm just a couple questions on that. Now,
Sure.
One, it is a unique kind of format as far as, because I believe, you know, a sister group, and then you mentioned there's you have 2 lawyers in your group.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we, like I said, we all have advanced degrees. So you're right. That does make us a little bit unique. The fact that my twin and I co-founded the team, that makes us a little bit unique. And then the fact that we are all female, again, adds to that uniqueness factor. Because, you know, when you look into the paranormal community, if you will, it really is a subculture from the mainstream. But when you really start delving into it, most of the teams are co-ed or led by males or a male only team. So to have a team that is all female as well as led by twin sisters and those of us that have advanced degrees, like I said before, it really is a unique format for us. And we've kind of utilized that to some extent.
Yeah, and that's kind of great too. You know, that way, you know, it's like, hey, we could go into these, environments, and it's not just that, that poster for the, especially in like in the 80s with the Ghostbusters, right? It was all like an all male team, you know.
Right.
But I mean, that's awesome. But
Mhm.
why, or being your other members that they're lawyers, how would that benefit in, let's say you go into an investigation and you guys do find that there is some sort of paranormal activity?
Well, I think all of our degrees are to some extent involved in the research aspect.
Got it.
For example, my master's degree is in criminal justice. So I use that background to really guide our investigation. So we look for things that maybe other teams might not really look for. So when we go into a location, so for example, we went to Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, which is in Petros, Tennessee. And when we go into these locations, we'll take a day tour first. And when we go into the day tours, we're constantly looking for things like, street lights or noise from car traffic. Are there any dogs in the neighborhood or kids in the neighborhood? Anything that if we hear or see during the night, we're not saying, oh my God, that's paranormal. We can explain it away as something else. And so because we all have that research background, I think it really leads to a more cohesive and diverse investigation, if that makes sense.
No, that totally makes sense. And that, you guys are pretty much, taking care of the, you're doing your due diligence, as
Mhm.
making sure that, okay, they're not actually like, quote unquote, these paranormal like activity or episodes that you're like, okay, you guys might be come up with a theory, and before you guys jump into these locations, you guys have A and B and C covered.
Mhm.
It's kind of like
Mhm.
that's pretty unique kind of aspect, because a lot of people probably just jump into it and like maybe they hear something in their audio device or either their camera, and they don't take into consideration maybe it could be some sort of a alarm outside, or maybe there's neighbors that have some sort of crazy apparatus, so you guys
Exactly.
actually, before you guys go into it, you guys actually do your work. But take us through, like, being that you guys do go in with like a research mindset first,
Mhm.
walk us through a normal day for the, Soul Sisters.
Sure, absolutely. So, as I said before, the first thing that we do when we go to any location to do an investigation is we will take a day tour. We'll go in and, like I said before, we'll look for things such as noise elements or light elements that could influence the night of the investigation. And then we also scout out locations where we can leave what we call stationary equipment. So, night vision video cameras, voice recorders, what we call trigger items. So, for example, if we're in Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, obviously it's a large campus. It was a maximum security prison.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can't be in all places at the same time. So we will leave stationary equipment to run during the night. So we'll always have eyes and ears on each of the cell blocks or the solitary confinement cell, or the cafeteria, someplace like that. So we always look for those during the day tour. We always look for locations where we can leave those items. And so then we take notes on all of that, and then we'll go back and we'll regroup and we'll decide again. We'll compare our notes, decide what the investigation is going to look like the night of the investigation. So then when we approach the location during the evening for that nighttime investigation, we'll go in and we'll divide up the equipment, and we each have a plan on, for example, Jenny's going to take this camera and this voice recorder and these items to this location. I'm going to go to this location. Michelle and Cara, they'll take theirs and go, and we set up all of that stationary equipment that we'll leave running throughout the night. And then we'll regroup, and then we'll go and actually conduct the investigation. So all five of us can go off and conduct what we call an EVP session, which is where we'll sit in a location with a voice recorder and we'll ask questions, essentially just talking into the air to see if we can get any responses in the moment, as
Mm-hmm.
well as any responses on those voice recorders. So it could be all five of us go, it could be two of us go, one of us can go. And so we really decide that again before we actually start the investigation, how that's going to look during the night. So we'll stay in a lot of cases. We're in these locations 8, 10, 12, some cases 24 hours conducting these experiments and these investigations. And so then afterwards, we'll collect all of our stationary equipment and we will listen to all of the audio recordings. So if we have 10 voice recorders running for 10 hours, we're listening to 100 hours worth of audio. Same thing with the
Wow.
night vision video cameras. If we've got 10 video cameras running for 10 hours, we're watching 100 hours of video. And so we'll go through that. It usually takes us about a month to go through all of that stuff.
Yeah, I
And then
bet.
we'll put together a documentary video that really outlines the history of the location, because we feel that the history is extremely important to what we do. So we'll give a very detailed historical narrative of the location, and then we'll put out there any of the compelling evidence that we found that night.
Yeah, I mean that's I mean being I myself am a filmmaker myself,
Hmm.
and I mean I could only imagine how much as far as footage you guys go through, right? I mean
Hmm.
with the equipment being used now, do you guys now I want to ask you about the equipment
Sure,
more like technical stuff, but
sure.
as far as the equipment, is there anything that's like a requirement as far as let's say the audio device? Like, is there a certain like it has to be a certain um, type of audio recorder for it? You know what I mean for a
Yeah.
paranormal episode?
No, not really. What we use are just Sony dictation recorders. They're
Okay.
like $30 on Amazon. So on those specific items, like the voice recorders, they're really nothing special. So if you wanted to go out and conduct a paranormal investigation, all of this stuff you can find. All the the quick and easy equipment, if you will, like the voice recorders and the flashlights and so on. Those are all readily available on Amazon. You can find those. We do have some pieces of electronic equipment that are especially designed for paranormal investigations, and they've been modified from other pieces of equipment. So, for example, we use what we call K2 meters. And these were meters that were designed by electricians, in the 80s and 90s to actually find electrical currents in the wall. So, to scout out, look for a power outlet or something like that.
Mm,
So, when you have it's a small handheld device. You probably see them on the popular television shows. And basically, it has a light array on it. It goes from green when there's no energy, and it spikes all the way up to red if there's a high amount of energy. And by high amount of energy, I mean a microwave going. And so when I take these, for example, through my house to test them, the only things that I can find to get this thing to go to red are if I set it next to a hair dryer that's on, or a microwave that's on, or the clothes dryer. That will get this to spike to red. So that's how much energy I'm talking about. So when I take these things into a location where I know that there's no power, the power's off, there's no electricity going into this building, and I start getting spikes on these meters, that to me is extremely compelling, because in theoretically I should be able to leave this in a room and it should never go off because there's no power. So
mm-hmm.
when they start going off, that to me is extremely compelling. So we use things like that. We use several of the pieces of equipment that have the same concept as a K2 meter, only it has an audible alarm. It also measures things like temperature differentials or pressure changes. That's what the REM pod is for. We have thermometers that we use. We have audible alarms, like laser alarms that we use. We utilize laser grids a lot next to our night vision video cameras. We'll set up a laser grid, and we've actually had several experiences where we've captured shadow figures walking through that laser grid. So we've used that with very much success. So that's typically the equipment that we use, electronic equipment. And then we also take in what we call trigger items. So these are items that are designed to elicit a response from any entity that may be in the area. So, for example, if we go into a prison, we'll take whiskey, we'll take cigarettes, we'll take
Mm.
newspapers or magazines, something that they can relate to, that we can say, okay, we're leaving this for you. And because of that, will you communicate with us? We investigated at a home where a 1935 shootout happened between some gangsters and the FBI. So in that instance, we took money, we took bullets, we took handguns, all to elicit a response from the spirits that we felt inhabited the house.
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff where there's a lot of items that I
Mm-hmm.
guess that something about it, right? And it just brings out whatever entity or spirit or paranormal being. It just, I don't know, why is that? Why is it that an object, is it just because that the entity or person or people that were in that environment before they passed away, is that their area where they're stuck, or how is that the concept
Yeah,
that you bring up?
yeah, we're talking about two different things there. So there are items where, say for example, they're in a house and they have a strong energy because they were related to that person. So for example, a brooch that your grandma wore, or a music box that your aunt loved, things like that do have the ability to hold on to energy. For me, I don't think those are spirits per se. I think that they're just conduits for the energy of the person. What we do is, like I said, we actually take in items that we feel can get a response. So, for example, when we went to Fort Mifflin in Philadelphia, in that fort, there's a small casemate. It's a subterranean room, essentially, and it's where they held a prisoner who was in solitary confinement during the Revolutionary War. So, in that instance, I thought to myself, what would somebody in solitary confinement want? Okay, they'd want water.
Mm-hmm.
They'd probably want food, and they'd probably want a cigarette. So we took a bottle of water, we took a piece of bread, and we took a cigarette, and we left it in that room for the person we wanted to communicate with. And when we walked in and I put it down, I said, "These items are for you. And if you want to acknowledge them, thank you. I appreciate that because we want to have a dialogue with you." Um, and then so we left them there, and then we went to other locations in the fort, and we just left those items alone with a night vision video camera and a laser grid sitting beside it. So then during the night, myself and another investigator, Cara, we went back into that room. It was just the two of us, and we sat down, and everything was quiet for a minute. And I said, "Did you see the items that we left you? We left you some water. We left you some cigarettes." And a male voice came through the air, and it said, "Thank you." And that was captured on every piece of equipment that we had in that room. And then, so we both heard it in the moment as well. And so then when we left, again, we left that area. The room is vacant. There's nobody in that room. And during the night, again, we captured a shadow figure that walked from the right to the left on the screen, and it cut through the laser grids. It cut all of the beams. So it looked about 5.5 foot tall. And so for me, I think that those trigger items that we left him, i.e., the water, the cigarette, and the bread, really elicited the response I was looking for. He knew that we were there for him. He knew that we wanted to tell his story. So he responded by giving us an audible thank you and then walking through the laser grid so we could see him.
Wow. Now, as far as the audio, right? Like when you do hear these voices, why is it where sometimes, and I have seen one of your videos where you could barely hear it and on the first glance, but when you ramp up the audio a little bit, you could really hear it. Now, has I mean, from the stuff that I've heard, there hasn't been one where it's really defining, right? Where it's like doesn't sound too whispery. Are they all like that?
No. In fact, there's actually been two that have been really good that they come right to mind. They were both captured at the Exchange Hotel in Gordonsville, Virginia. So if you go back and watch this episode, you'll hear both of these. The Exchange Hotel was a hotel that was built before the Civil War. It's a 3-story building. It has these grand rooms, tall ceilings, tall staircases. And during the Civil War, it was converted into a Civil War hospital. So they have over 700 confirmed deaths of both Confederate and Union soldiers in this hospital. And then after the Civil War, it was converted back into a hotel. So now it's actually a
Wow.
museum. It's a Civil War museum. And so we stayed the night in that hotel. There was 5 of us when we had full run of the property. And there were only 5 females in this building. So that's my environment. Okay. I've got this Civil War hospital. There were 5 females. And during this time frame, 2 of us were outside. So now there's only 3 females in the house. And during our setup, we had left a voice recorder on the bed in one of the rooms. So the 3 that were in the room, or in the house, were across the room. So you can kind of hear them in the background. But through the voice recorder, we captured a male's voice. It sounded like an old man. And he says, "I don't know, I'll be back at 4:30. Not a whisper, completely crystal clear. You can hear it plain as day. And then about 2 hours later, excuse me, about 2 hours later, we were all in the house, but we were on different levels. And there was a child's voice that was captured on the voice recorder. And he says, "Hi, this is my bed." Again, not a whisper.
Wow.
It came through clear as day. And those are probably two of the best EVPs that we've captured. Now, to go back to your question, a lot of them are in a whispered tone. My belief for that is because it takes a lot of energy to communicate. And so when you get things like hi or hello, those are words that really don't take a lot of energy because you're exhaling. To say a full phrase or to say something in an extremely loud voice, I think that takes more energy. It takes much more energy to actually appear as an apparition as well, but we've seen those also. So that's my take on why things really do sound like they're whispers. But because we spend so much time listening to these voice recorders, I mean, 99.9% of my day is spent listening to static. It's just like just static. So when something comes through, I can usually pick it up pretty
Yeah.
clearly. But that being said, once I do that, I will clip that piece of audio and I'll send it to everybody else on the team, and I'll say, "Can you hear this?" I don't tell them what I hear. I just say, "Can you hear something in this clip?" I'll let it run for about 15 seconds. And then if they can hear it, then we discuss what we think it says and we come up with a consensus. If they cannot hear it, then I don't even put it out as evidence, because I feel that we are, a microcosm of our audience. So I'm not going to put anything out there that the majority of my team cannot hear.
Interesting. Interesting. And that it's kind of, so let's say four of you hear it and one person doesn't. Does
Mhm.
that pass the evidence?
Most of the time it does. Again, it's one of those things. A majority of the time we all hear it. When we were at the Lizzie Borden house, we captured an EVP, again, all
That's
females in the
that's the
house.
one. That's the one I saw fully through. That
Okay,
seems to
great.
be like that seems to be a popular location.
It is. The Lizzie Borden house, if you're a paranormal investigator, it is on your bucket list to go to. So the Lizzie Borden house, the Villisca Axe Murder House, Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, these are hot spots for paranormal investigators. So when we were at the Lizzie Borden house, again, to your point, a lot of them were whispers and we didn't hear them in the moment. So if you'll recall, there was that time when Jenny and Michelle were talking in the parlor, and our voice recorder captured a male's voice saying, "Right here next to you." To me, it came up pretty clearly, again, because
Yeah.
I listened to this. But that's the reason why we do enhance the audio on that last, because we'll play it 3 times. I will enhance the audio on that last time to see if everybody can hear it. And again, when we put this stuff out, all of it is what we believe it's saying. If somebody else comes to me and says, "Well, I think it's saying this," and that's absolutely fine. We're putting out what we believe it is saying, and I'm also putting out what I believe is happening in that location. So I'm not trying to convince anybody that this is haunted. I'm not trying to convince anybody that I'm right. What I'm doing is putting together a narrative of what we believe is going on and what we believe happened during our investigation. So again, if somebody wants to come to me and say, "I think it's this, not paranormal, but I think it's this," then I absolutely want to have that dialogue, because, I'm not going to be right 100% of the time. I'm just saying that during our investigation, when we controlled for everything that we can control for, i.e., light, sound, wind, noise, all of that, these are the things that I cannot explain after those things are accounted for.
Hey, are you a photographer, designer, artist, architect, model, musician, or even a makeup artist? You gotta check out Portfolio Box. With Portfolio Box, you're not forced to use any standard theme. You can use any style for any page and create a truly unique website that reflects you and your work. If you're a creative, it's a no-brainer. Get 50% off for 12 months on all plans with promo code ROD50. That's promo code ROD50. And check out portfoliobox.net today. Now, when somebody asks you a question, what's the difference between a paranormal investigator and a ghost hunter? What's the differences and what are the similarities, if any?
They're really the same things. Paranormal investigators, to us, we use that term because we're looking for things that are unexplainable. And it may not be a ghost per se. Again, if we can find plausible explanations to what people consider paranormal, then we're going to do that. So, for example, we were called in to investigate this business in our hometown, and the guy said, "I know that there's ghosts in here. I just bought this business, and it was a storefront business. So he had a brick and mortar location, and the storefront was all glass. He had some mirrors running down the side, and then he had display cases running down the length of the storefront." So he called and he said, I know that there's ghosts in here. I absolutely believe it. Can you come and do an investigation? I said, fine. So one of the claims was that his night vision video cameras kept going off during the night when there was nobody in there. There was no motion. Nothing was happening. There were things that were happening that he can't explain. So we went in and we did the investigation, and we weren't getting anything. We weren't getting anything on our equipment. We weren't feeling anything. There was nothing to indicate to us that there was anything paranormal, or i.e. ghosts, going on. So we left some of our night vision video cameras there to run during the night. And so when we came back the next morning, I said, did your motion cameras go off? Did your video cameras go off? He's like, oh yeah, it was so active last night. Things were just popping. And I said, okay, give me the timestamps. And so he gave me the timestamps, and then I took my video cameras and I cross-referenced them to his. And so what I was finding was that where his storefront was located, it was on a highway that had a high U-turn rate. So when the cars were making a U-turn on this road in front of his store, the headlights were bouncing into his storefront,
Uh,
hitting the
yeah.
mirror, and essentially blinding his night vision video, turning it from night to day and then back. And it looked like something was moving because those cameras kept going off. So I said, just either change the position of your camera or change the mirror. And he did, and that stopped the quote unquote ghosts. So back to your question, we're looking for things that are unexplainable. And if we can find out the answer to that, then we will give you an answer to that. So we use the term paranormal investigator because we feel that we're looking for unexplainable, not just ghosts or spirits.
Yeah, and that goes back to doing walking around the area, right? Doing as
Hmm.
far before you go into the actual location, because
Exactly right.
like that's a good specific detail as far as where the location is as far as map wise. Is there cars? Is there
Hmm.
any sort of anything that's going on that might happen? But that's just one of the many things that I feel like maybe from a normal person that maybe has doesn't really know anything about paranormal research. You get that stigma, right? As far as maybe like especially with some of these shows that you see that maybe it's staged,
Hmm.
or you get some of these scripted, right? what
Hmm.
what's some of the like locations that you would say that if somebody actually would walk through or go to would actually change their mind?
For me personally, the ones that we felt that were really active with paranormal activity has been the old Gilchrist County Jail in Trenton, Florida, which is about an hour's west of Gainesville, Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, the Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. These are all locations where we've experienced unexplainable things. And to go back to the first part of your question, there is a stigma. You tell somebody that you're a paranormal investigator, and they either look at you like you have three heads, or they want to
Hmm.
tell you their ghost story. That there's really no in between. And paranormal investigations are looked at as a subculture. Those aside from the mainstream media. So we are looked at as a subculture, but the popular television shows have done a great job of highlighting that we're here. But to your point, they have really done us a disservice because a lot of them are scripted. A lot of them have that sensationalism factor for audience ratings, right? Because
Hmm.
nobody wants to just sit and watch somebody walk through a building and maybe not get something. There's always going to be every episode you're going to have the screaming, the running out, the oh my god, what was that? And that's really not what we do. But for television shows, they have to build that audience base, and they do that through sensationalism. So for us, it is a little bit, it's difficult to build our audience base because they are looking for that, and that's not really what we do. So when we go to these places, back to the second part of your question, like Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary or the old Gilchrist County Jail, for us, it really is about the exploration of both the historical aspect of the place as well as unexplainable things that happened during that night. So, for example, the old Gilchrist County Jail. We went in, we controlled for everything that we could. And the first time I investigated there, I was with my friend Miranda Young from Ghost Biker Explorations. She and I were the only two people in the building for the entire night. So this is a small county jail. It was an operation from 1928 to 1968. And so when we went in there, we were getting things. Every piece of equipment that we had that night was validating every other piece of equipment. And by that, I mean our K2 meters were going off on command. There's no power in the building, but yet when I asked, are you here? Can you light my meter up to red? It was lighting up. We were capturing EVPs. We were seeing shadow figures with our eyes, and then we captured them on video camera walking through our laser grids. And so those are things, again, I can't explain. And so that's what we put forth. So the Old Gilchrist County Jail, the Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, Lizzie Borden, the Villisca Axe Murder House, these are all places that we've gone to and captured things that we cannot explain.
Now, at any given moment, has your team or yourself felt maybe we are in a vulnerable position? Like at any point, you guys feel like you guys were in danger?
Not so much danger or vulnerable. So there's two things that we do. The first thing, to protect ourselves physically, we all carry handguns. So we're all licensed to carry. We're more afraid of the human element than we are the ghost element.
Yeah, I was going
Honestly.
to ask you. I was going to ask you that.
So,
Well, is how effective is that?
so we all carry handguns, so we're licensed to carry, and we will take those with us on investigations. And then for the paranormal side, for the spiritual side, we all are Christians, and we do go into this with what I call the right intentions. We don't go in and provoke. You will never see us go in and say, hey, you piece of shit, if you're here, I'm not going to believe you're here until you throw a chair at me. That's not what we do. We actually go in, and the very first question we ask, or very first statement we say is, we're only here to tell your story. And if you want to contact with us, if you want to communicate with us, we want to tell your story. And that's legitimately what we want to do. So we go in with, like I said, what I think, or what I say is the right intentions. We don't provoke. We don't try to stigmatize at all. It is that true sense of exploration, if you will. So we do say a prayer of protection before we go in, and we say a prayer of protection before we come out. Now, that being said, there have been absolutely moments where we're in a location and we are startled. But in that instance, we'll turn around and say, what was that? Let's go find out. We were in West Virginia State Penitentiary, and underneath that facility is a boiler room. So you've got to go down this set of stairs. It's cold, it's dark, it's dank. And we're in there, 4 females, in the complete darkness, and we're asking questions, and my younger sister's hair gets pulled. And again, we can't explain that because we're in a semicircle looking at each other, and something pulls her hair from behind. So that's happened. I routinely get my pant leg pulled, or feel a cold breeze, or something taps me on the shoulder, and that's fine. We say, if you want to communicate with us by touching us, you can do that, but you can't hurt us. You're not allowed to hurt us. You're not allowed to come home with us. And that's really how we set those boundaries. But as far as running out screaming or anything like that, or feeling threatened by an entity that we can't see, that's never happened.
Yeah, a lot of people that mention an experience, they mention the tapping on the leg or tapping on their shoulder, or
Mm-hmm.
that cold breeze, that kind of that eerie feeling. That's kind of just the trend that everybody says.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And, and,
Go ahead.
and and really, when you start delving into this, you do kind of have those quote unquote tells, if you will. So, for example, mine is my left leg will start to go a little bit numb, kind of like how it falls asleep, when you feel your leg fall
Mm-hmm.
asleep. And so when that happens, I just kind of say to myself, okay, I think we may be getting something tonight. We may have an active night. There are times when I don't feel that, but we'll still get things on our voice recorder. So, for example, when we went to Fort Mifflin, this is an amazing location in Philadelphia. This was a Revolutionary War fort. It was a fort or a prison during the Civil War, so a ton of history in this location. And so we set up all of our equipment. We heard a few things during the night, like what I mentioned in that casemate. But other than that, I mean, it really felt dead, for lack of a better term, pardon the pun. But after we got home and was starting going through all of the evidence, we were capturing things all during the night. We were capturing EVPs. We were capturing that shadow figure that I mentioned. We had some light anomalies that I can't explain. So even though I'm not feeling things in the moment, or some of our equipment's not going off in the moment, that's why we go through every piece of audio and video footage that we capture, because there are things that will happen when we aren't there in a location physically.
Interesting, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to making this a business, now you guys, it's all over the country. If you guys get caught, like as far as there's a certain aspect that you need to go check out, if they give you guys a call, are you
Mm-hmm.
guys country or international?
Right now we're country, and just to kind of to clarify, we don't make any money off of this. This is all self-funded. This when we get called in to conduct an investigation at a business or a private residence, we don't take any money for that. So we actually have two types of investigation. Those that I call commercial, or larger scale investigations. These are when we will go to a place like the Lizzie Borden house, or the Ma Barker house, or the Villisca Axe murder house. So those are all over the country, and we go to those to really enhance our portfolio, and look again for that paranormal evidence, that unexplained evidence. And then the other side is those private businesses that will call us either for a house, or a business, or a residence, or something like that. So to your question, yes, we go all over the country. If there's a case, like for example, we're mostly based in Florida, say there's a case in Texas and they need assistance on a case, if we can't get to it physically, we have other people in the paranormal community that are in that area that we'll call. So we basically know people in every state. We actually know people in teams across the world. I know some in Australia. I know some in England and France. So if somebody calls us and we can't physically get to it, then I have resources that I can call up and help those people.
That's interesting as well. I mean, because a lot of the hotspots are obviously in the South,
Mm-hmm.
New Orleans and where you're at now. The Midwest also is pretty hot too, but there's nothing happening here in where I'm at. Why is that?
Where are you?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Well, you never know. There are actually a ton of locations in Los Angeles. The name of the bar escapes me, but there is a bar downtown that's supposed to be very active. I mean, a nightclub, like a comedy slash nightclub. The name escapes me at the moment. There's a lot of places out in California. The Queen Mary's out in California. That's one of the most haunted
Yeah,
locations in the country. So yeah, there are locations all over. You just really have to kind of delve into it and really look for some of them. The Midwest does have some hot spots. As I said before, we went to Villisca Axe Murder House, and that's in Iowa. We went to Malvern Manor, that's in Iowa. We've been to the Stanley Hotel in Colorado. We were supposed to go out to Arizona this year for a Paracon, but that got canceled due to COVID. So we were going to go out to several locations out there. So it really is something that once you delve into this and really get immersed into this community, there are a lot of places out there that you can investigate that welcome investigators, and they don't have to be large locations. You can absolutely go into your backyard in your community and find places that have legends and lore, cemeteries to old houses to, haunted parks and stuff like that. So you really, once you start delving into it, you can find a lot of places that are reported to have activity.
yeah, and I mean, being that we have Halloween right around the corner now,
Mm-hmm.
what are you guys doing right now as far as the paranormal work?
Oh gosh, we just came off an investigation in North Carolina, and we also had a this past weekend. So we did an investigation at Henry River Mill Village in North Carolina. This is actually a place that we have been to before, so this was a secondary investigation. We are getting ready to drop another episode. Hopefully, that will be next week from a place again in North Carolina, the Grand Old Lady Hotel. That's going to be a really cool episode because we had some amazing, unexplainable activity there. We've got 4 investigations coming up before January of next year. 2 in Florida, 1 in Texas that we're going to, 1 in Georgia. So we have a lot of things in the works.
Yeah, you guys are busy. We got
Yeah.
that's
We do tend to stay busy, but it's a lot of fun. The way I look at this is I get to visit some amazing historical locations, places that a lot of people really only had the opportunity to go to on Google or visit in picture books. And to be able to go to these locations and really have that tactile experience with history. I've put my hands on the bricks of a Revolutionary War fort, or I've walked the floor of the Lizzie Borden house, or climbed the steps of the St. Augustine Lighthouse. So the fact that I can do that and do it with my sisters is just, to me, an amazing experience. So, that's why we plan these. That's why we do these. We really try to hit 4 what I would call larger locations each year, and then we'll do one-off locations. Maybe 2 or 3 of us will go, or 2 of us will go. But for us, it keeps us busy, but we absolutely love it.
Yeah. Now, for the audience, where can they find, as far as your YouTube channel? Obviously, that I recommend you, if you guys need to go watch a thorough investigation. You guys do an incredible job. So,
Well, thank you.
where can we find as far as your social media?
Sure, absolutely. So we're very active on Facebook under Soul Sisters Paranormal. Our website is www.soulsistersparanormal.com. And then our YouTube channel is under Soul Sisters Paranormal. And anything that we do video-wise, we put there, as well as on our website. You can contact us via our website. We have a contact us page, so you can do that if you have any questions or recommend a location to investigate, or just message us on Facebook, and we'll respond pretty quickly.
Awesome. Now, I can't wait to see your next episode, and everything else that you guys will be up to in the next couple of weeks.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, just follow us along, and we've got a lot of adventures coming up. We'll be making some really cool announcements next year on some things that we're going to start expanding a little bit on. And so, yeah, please follow along, and again, message us if you have any recommendations or questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Sumner, and I hope to have you again on the podcast.
Absolutely, Rod. Thank you, and have a great evening.
You too. Have a good one. Would you like to be on the podcast? Got something to talk about? Make sure to head over to the website at hardwoodrod.com. Leave your name and the topic you'd like to discuss, and I'll add you to the calendar.
We just want our respect. Rob wants his respect. Coach Vogel wants his respect. Our organization wants their respect. Laker Nation wants their respect. And I want my damn respect too.